loud noise in the background at the time where I was basically trying to do my video in addition to whoever this guy is right here. But that's it. Let's do the news. Basically, I am at the Summit of the Americas. We're in Los Angeles. The convention center is immediately behind me. And while the convention center is immediately behind me, yeah, I'm loud talking because the guy was basically crowding me and needed me to leave. But there's that. Yeah, I'm a little testy this morning. So far, so good. It's been an interesting start, though. The U.S. is basically running this, and they have been doing somewhat of a shabby job of doing it. I hate to say. Part of the problem with this is the information that they're providing. It seems that there are certain people and sites and organizations that have more access to that information just because they basically know certain things, as opposed to smaller outlets. They may not be aware of it. So, for example, if you're trying to interview various people that are here, let's say from the State Department, well, okay, well, who is going to be here? Where's that list of the people that are going to be here? And when they don't necessarily provide that list, who are the organizations that basically get those interviews? So you get bigger organizations like CNN, Telemundo, etc., with other people like myself not being in the circle. Apparently, those organizations contacted the State Department in order to get a heads up on that. So they basically can get in to get the interviews that they wanted with the various people who are from state, with other people not being allowed in the building while that is taking place. I fortunately was in the building lingering, and I got to get a question from Ken Salazar. Now, Ken Salazar is the U.S. ambassador to Mexico. Now, the reason that's significant is because Mexico is not coming. President Obrador decided not to show up because the United States decided to disinvite Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela. In disinviting those countries, many of the other countries decided either they weren't going to show up or they were going to send a lesser delegate to get across their displeasure at not getting the invite. Now think about that. You're basically having the Summit of Americas, but you're making a choice not to invite certain countries, as if you have a moral high ground or standard where you can make the determination. We are getting restarted an economic war that the world is basically suffering from, even going to the point of famine in various countries. We were trying to get Maduro to give us oil because of the mess that we made in Ukraine, while simultaneously deciding that he is not of caliber to invite. Cuba has been going around giving their doctors and their medicine all across the world in order to assist from COVID. We have 1 million people dead from COVID. They have been doing God's work in order to try to prevent the spread and to coming up with vaccines and everything else. They're also disinvited. Look, whatever the sins in a particular individual nation, is it really for us to get in and decide what they should do with their government? And do we really have the standing, or for that matter, the banner of success to be the one who indicates or decides that? I would say no. If you're going to have a convention of the Americas, then you should have the countries of the Americas, even ones you don't particularly like. It is, after all, a way of trying to get dialogue, conversation, and get involved. Not to mention, we are friends with dictators in Saudi Arabia, for God's sake, or for that matter, the kill squads we used to use in South America. But now, we're high and mighty on this very particular point of who we want to invite, or for that matter, to not invite. I just find it special and a level of hypocrisy that's astonishing. Nevertheless, many of the other nations clearly felt the same, because many of those nations didn't necessarily show up. So we will have a truncated Summit of the Americas. By the same token, this woman from the state was very nice. She took my information down. I was able to get a question in with Ken Salazar. And basically what I asked them was, look, this has been full of controversy from the beginning. And can you articulate President Obrador's reason and rationale for not showing up? Meaning, at the point where you disinvited those countries and the response was for him and other countries not to show up, I need you to articulate that, for one, meaning, do you understand this point? And B, do you agree with this point? Now, I'm trying to get him to, at the very least, give out a rationale for why this is taking place, and to get him to confront this question of whether or not he believes it's right or wrong for Obrador to show up, or for not to show up, and for that matter, why it's wrong. That's what I was trying to get at. He, finding out I was working for Radio Sputnik, basically dodged, and on top of that, basically said, we're against dictatorships. No, you're not. You're friends with Saudi Arabia. You're perfectly fine with Saudi Arabia. You're perfectly fine with the dictatorships that were in South America. It is Tillerson memo describes, we don't hit our friends on this stuff. We're fine with the kingdoms and whatnot that are in Middle East. No issue with that at all. We're fine with the Kiev regime that basically overthrew the previous government. We helped overthrow the government of Honduras. And now we're trying to get that president in as a drug lord and prosecute the guy. So, spare me this idea of, oh, we don't like to deal with dictatorships. You did dictatorships just fine. The difference here is these guys aren't in your orbit. You don't have full control over them. They're not vassal states, in which case you don't want them to be there. Some of those countries are success stories. I'm sorry, Cuba is a success story on the issue of education and medicine. Yes, there may be other vagaries within the context of the country, but is that really our business? And at a forum where you have the capacity to basically have those conversations and air that stuff out and talk about ways you can agree, ways you can move forward, whether in economic or political development, why don't you take that opportunity? Is it really in the best interest of the world from the standpoint of security, from the standpoint of safe economic prosperity, from the standpoint of educating your populations and everything? Is it really required that the U.S. interest is served in all of these situations? And when it is not served in a particular situation, you just don't want to be involved with the root of the country. I find it astonishing. Yes, of course, those countries should have been invited. And the fact that Obrador is not here is a big statement in and of itself, right? I mean, dude is, dude is the president of the country to our south, a massive neighbor to us. And look, whatever we want to think of Mexico, at the end of the day, you have to deal with Mexico. They were a trading partner, relationship in regards to immigration, all of those things come into play. He is not here. He is making a statement. And I suspect he is annoyed and angry about more than just the Cuba stuff. There's other stuff that's been going on between the United States, apparently, that he is unhappy about, at the very least reading the articles on it. Nevertheless, I am here. I am going to continue to do the reporting. I have multiple channels that I'm going to be working on today for the network in order to kind of give them what I've seen so far. What you hear in the background is a protest. There's a protest against Nicaragua, meaning the Ortega government, basically saying we want freedom. He's a dictator. And there's also a protest in regards to the U.S. immigration system, where I had a great conversation with the guy who made the point of saying, look, they use this for politics without really getting anything real and legitimate accomplished. Whereas Republicans use it to hit Democrats basically hang it over the Hispanics' head, when really they need to move forward on legislation. And he was even very specific on the legislation. It had something to do with residency legislation that apparently was part of the legal system, that if a person is here for a long period of time, however they got here, then if there's no violence, there's no crime, they're integrated into society, then they basically become an American citizen. Now, I'm unaware of this law, but he said this law goes all the way back to like Ronald Reagan, and so I definitely need to check that out. But they're very unhappy with Biden, very unhappy with the political space in regards to immigration. And the point that I made to him was like, dude, if they do that, wouldn't that create an incentive for more people to come into the country? Think back to when Biden basically got in office and he made that statement where, no, we're not going to take adults, but kids will keep. In which case you had all of these kids basically ram into the border. My point to him was, wouldn't that create a similar situation of people coming to the border knowing that if they can get into the country and stay in for a period of time, so they basically, again, get membership, by default. His thing was, you got to look at the political system, you got to look at the political situation, etc. He didn't entirely have a clear answer for that one. He didn't have a clear answer for it. I just said that. On some level, I guess he's admitted that I'm right. He also made the point, though, that COVID changed things. I said, ish. I mean, we have a huge number of people hitting our border now, even though we have a million people dead from COVID. So whatever the ramifications of COVID was at the beginning, it seems that those are edging off, and Biden is still stuck with the problem of immigration. His point is they have legislation that can help. They need to do the legislation. They need to take small steps in order to get bigger steps going through. And look, I don't know if I agree with that particular bit of legislation, but I do agree with them that these guys have basically left them in a lurch and just used it to hang over their heads to get votes. Both parties using it politically without necessarily getting anything done on the issue in real terms. We've had Susan Pai on to discuss how atrocious and backwards this immigration system is. Even the number of people that are waiting to get a hearing versus number of judges. It's like 100,000 judges for over 1 million people. And so this isn't something that we necessarily focus on. Parties use it for their political ends without necessarily doing anything real on it. And that protest is there to make it clear that they are aware of what is going on. So, I am going to be puttering about today. Newsman, my lips are chapped really bad. I apologize for that. But hit the like button, share this video, You would have many of these that are basically going to be coming out over the next few days. Um, and that is all I have for right now. I mean, to be honest, it doesn't entirely start officially till tomorrow, even though they're having interviews and everything else. And what's aggravating about those interviews is like I'm sitting there and I'm like, how's Cali Wheat? Not bad. Not bad. I had the opportunity to protect last night. I can't do it here, of course. And I'm not going to be able to do it over the course of the week. But at nights where I can chill out after a long day, oh yes. Oh yes. I just say yes. Just say yes. But look, one last point. It seems as if that they had a certain group of people who they were okay with getting for interviews. Now, for that special group of people, either the organizations knew enough and had enough experience to contact the State Department or somebody in the State Department to get the list of people who are going to be here. But that list was not forthcoming, or that list was not necessarily available. Don't get me wrong, they give you lists of certain, let's say like the Business Guild or something like that. I can't think of the name of it. It's U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Well, you have John Kerry and many other people that are there for it, but that's not really part of the state, which is kind of the issue. The interviews that the people were basically having in there today were almost not technically in line for it, meaning they had to have special access in order to do it. And what it means is that by putting in that request, they were able to potentially get the interview. But the problem is, how do you know that the request, how do you know who to send the request to if, you don't have the list of the people for the request? So there's that. But nevertheless, we're here. I am going to try to get as many interviews as I possibly can, just like the one with Salazar. And I will give you a heads up on what is going on and the movements and machinations of what is taking place so far, at least to the best of my ability. Hit the like, share it, subscribe. Talk to you later, guys.